Imagine losing your mother at 7 years old, then your father, then falling so ill that doctors give you days to live. Your body paralyzed, your hair falling out, the priest administering last rites. Now imagine surviving all of that, only to discover that every door you knock on closes in your face. We cannot accept you. You are not suitable. Go home. This is Gemma Galgani's life at 21 years old, an orphan, living on charity in a stranger's home, desperate to give her life to God in a convent, but rejected again and again and again. She has nothing left to offer but her prayers. So she prays. And on Thursday evening, June 8th, 1899, as she kneels alone in her room, something happens that will change her forever. Her hands begin to burn, then her feet, then her side, and when she opens her eyes and looks down, she sees blood. Her blood, pouring from wounds that were not there moments before. The 5 wounds of Christ have appeared on her body. For the next 4 years, every single Thursday, those wounds will open. Every single week, Gemma Galgani will bleed from her hands, her feet, and her side until Saturday morning. Real blood, deep wounds, witnessed by doctors, priests, and the family she lives with. The medical establishment calls it hysteria, a psychological disorder, female theatrics. The skeptics call it fraud, self-inflicted wounds, religious fanaticism. Even her own confessor, Monsignor Volpe, initially writes in his notes, extraordinary phenomena, possibly due to hysteria. But the wounds are real, the pain is real, and so are the demonic attacks that leave burns on her skin, the visions of Christ that console her, the battles with darkness that rage around her bed at night. The church will investigate for years. The evidence will be undeniable, and eventually, the Vatican will declare what many already knew. This rejected orphan, this girl the convents wouldn't accept, bears the wounds of Christ himself. This is the complete story of Saint Gemma Galgani, the Virgin of Lucca, a long journey through a childhood shattered by death, through sickness that should have killed her, through rejection that would have broken most souls, and through mystical suffering that medical science still cannot explain. You will witness the moment the stigmata first appear, the weekly agony of wounds that open and close, the demonic attacks that leave physical marks, the convents that rejected her, the mission God gave her instead, and the peaceful death of a 25-year-old virgin who became one of the fastest canonized saints in church history. If you want to understand how God chooses the weakest vessels to manifest his greatest power, stay with me to the end. Welcome to Catholic Hearts. Subscribe now to discover the extraordinary stories that shaped our Catholic faith. The year is 1878. Italy breathes the air of a new era. The unified kingdom is only 17 years old. Machines advance. Factories smoke. The 19th century walks toward its end, promising progress, science, reason. But in the hills of Tuscany, far from the industrial cities, life follows another rhythm. In the small villages between Lucca and Caponori, families still live as their grandparents lived. They work the land. They pray the rosary. They baptize their children. They bury their dead. Dynamic editing required. Contrast between industrial Italy and rural Tuscany. It is a divided world. On one side, modernity promising to free man from God. On the other, tradition still kneeling before tabernacles. And in this tension between 2 centuries, between 2 visions of the world, God is about to write a story that will confound the wise and illuminate the simple. In the village of Camigliano, part of the municipality of Caponori, lives the Galgani family. Enrico Galgani is a pharmacist, an educated man, respected, prosperous. His wife, Aurelia Landi, comes from one of the oldest families of Lucca. They have 8 children. The home is blessed. Prayers are constant. The Catholic faith permeates every moment of the day. But a shadow hangs over that home. Aurelia is sick. Tuberculosis. The same disease that has already taken some of their children as infants. She fights. She resists. But her body withers. The children know. The doctors know. It is only a matter of time. And among these children, there's a girl. The first daughter after several boys. Born on March 12, 1878, at 6:30 in the evening. Her grandfather wanted to name her Umberta Pia in honor of the king. Her uncle chose another name, a name that Aurelia did not like because there were no saints in heaven with that name. Gemma, in Italian Gem, the parish priest reassured the mother. May she become the first saint with that name. May she fill that empty place in paradise. No one imagined how prophetic that blessing would be. Gemma is not an ordinary child. From the age of 2, when she begins attending the Vellini sisters' nursery, everyone notices. There is something different about her. Something that goes beyond precocious intelligence, beyond exemplary obedience. The sisters testify she demonstrated developed use of reason and precocious intelligence. We could teach her prayers that lasted 25 minutes without her tiring. At 5 years old, Gemma reads the breviary perfectly. Not just the words. She understands. She absorbs. And more than that, she prays with an intensity that impresses the adults around her. Her mother, Aurelia, even weakened by disease, dedicates herself to transmitting to her daughter the first devotions. She teaches her to read, to write, but above all, she teaches her to love Christ, to meditate on the Passion, to see in every crucifix not merely a symbol, but a person who suffered for love. Gemma listens, observes, contemplates, and something plants itself in her heart, a seed that will grow in ways no one can predict. The year is 1885. Gemma is 7 years old. Her mother is dying. Everyone knows. The doctors no longer hide it. It is only a matter of days, perhaps weeks. On May 26th, Gemma receives the sacrament of confirmation at the Church of San Michele in Foro by the hands of Monsignor Nicola Gallardi, Archbishop of Lucca. It is Tuesday, just after Pentecost. The girl participates in the ceremony with seriousness, with that intensity that already marks her soul. After the service, while her Aunt Elena attends Holy Mass, something happens. Something that Gemma will remember for the rest of her life. Something that marks the beginning of everything. She hears a voice, not with her ears, deeper, in her heart, an interior locution, as mystics call it. The voice asks, "Will you give me your mother?" Gemma responds immediately, "Yes, but if you take me too." "No," the voice repeats, familiar to her already. "Give your mother to me willingly. You must stay with your father now. I will take her to heaven, you know. Will you give her to me willingly?" She is forced to answer yes. 4 months later, on September 17th, 1886, Aurelia Landi dies. Gemma is not present. Following the doctor's advice, the children have been removed from their mother to prevent contagion. Gemma is at the home of her maternal uncle and aunt, Antonio and Elena Landi, in San Gennaro. There, her father comes to give her the news. Aunt Elena later recalls with dramatic emphasis that the girl, at first, would not believe it, remaining immobile, staring. The house in Lucca is emptier now. 8 children without a mother, a father trying to hold everything together, and a 7-year-old girl who gave her mother to God because he asked. Gemma returns home for Christmas 1886. The house is quieter, colder, but something in the little girl has changed. She prays more. She speaks less. Her eyes carry something the other children do not have. A knowledge of sorrow, an early acquaintance with sacrifice, and God is only beginning. After returning home, Enrico Galgani decides his daughter should resume her studies. He takes her first to the school of the Mincacci sisters, then to the municipal school with teacher Barbara Polly. At 10 and 11 years old, Gemma proves herself an excellent student. But in 1887, in preparation for her first communion, something more important happens. She begins attending the Institute of the Oblate Sisters of the Holy Spirit, founded by St. Elena Guerra, to learn catechism. There, she meets Sister Camilla Vagliensi, a religious of the Oblates who often explains to her a passage of the Gospel. In particular, the Passion of Christ. The impact is visceral. Sister Camilla speaks of the scourging, the thorns, the nails, the lance. She does not sanitize. She does not soften. She tells Gemma the truth, what Christ suffered for love. The girl is struck so deeply that it causes a strong fever. She is forced to sleep for an entire day. Sister Camilla dies a year later, in 1888. Gemma never sees her again during her studies at the Institute, but the seed is planted. The Passion of Christ is no longer a story. It is an obsession, a meditation, a call. On June 17, 1887, the Feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, Gemma receives her first Holy Communion in the chapel of the Zaytine. She describes these moments as the most beautiful of her life. Her first encounter with the Eucharist. Monsignor Giovanni Volpi, who will later become her confessor and spiritual guide, is so impressed by the girl's devotion that he permits her to receive communion 3 times per week, uncommon in that era. Gemma is only 9 years old, but already her life is oriented toward one reality: union with Christ through his suffering. She does not yet know how literally God will answer that desire. The wounds are coming. The years that follow are marked by 2 realities: education and loss. Gemma continues her studies at the Institute of the Oblate Sisters. She excels in history, in languages, in sacred studies. But more than academic knowledge, she absorbs spiritual lessons. Sister Giulia Sestini takes over where Sister Camilla left off, inviting the young girl to deepen her meditation on the sorrows of Christ during his passion. Sister Giulia teaches her about humility, about small penances, about uniting one's own suffering to the suffering of Christ. Gemma listens with the same intensity that marks everything she does. Nothing is casual for this girl. Nothing is superficial. Their relationship remains strong even after Gemma leaves the Institute. Years later, when Gemma is dying, she will ask about Sister Giulia. The news will reach the nun only after Gemma has already expired. But amid this spiritual growth, another shadow falls. The Galgani family's fortunes collapse. Enrico's pharmacy fails. Investments go wrong. The family that once lived comfortably now faces poverty. Real poverty. They are forced to move from their respectable home to Via del Biscian, a poor area of Lucca. The children feel the shame, the change in social status, the whispers of neighbors. Gemma is now a teenager, and teenager girls notice everything. She sees her father's worry, her siblings' hunger, the bills that cannot be paid, the creditors at the door. But she does not complain. Instead, she shares what little she has. Her meager meals are divided with the poor who are even worse off. Her devotion to charity becomes legendary among those who know her. At school, even as her family struggles to pay tuition, St. Elena Guerra, the foundress of the Oblates, exempts Gemma from the fees. She describes the girl as very quiet and always obedient. But not all the sisters share this view. 2 nuns in particular, Sister Gesualda Petroni and Sister Elisa Pieri, despise Gemma. They mock her, judge her as hypocritical. They will later work to ensure she is not permitted to enter the convent when she applies. Gemma endures this in silence. She does not defend herself. She does not complain. She simply continues to pray. Through all of this, the poverty, the mockery, the uncertainty, one thing grows stronger in Gemma's heart: the desire to give herself completely to God. She wants to be a religious, a nun. She dreams of the cloister, of vows, of a life dedicated entirely to prayer and penance. But she is too young, and her family needs her. So she waits. She prays. She studies. She meditates on the passion of Christ with ever-increasing intensity. The Sacred Heart of Jesus becomes her great devotion. The pierced heart that loved unto death. The wounded heart that still loves. She contemplates it for hours. In church, at home, wherever she can find a moment alone. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, something is being prepared. God is fashioning her into a vessel, polishing the gem, preparing her for something she cannot yet imagine. Gemma is now approaching adulthood, 17 years old. The question looms: what will her life be? Marriage? Unthinkable. She has already resolved in her heart to remain a virgin for Christ. Religious life? She burns for it. But how? When? Which order? And then her father dies. Enrico Galgani, weakened by worry and work, succumbs. The family is now not just poor, but fatherless. 8 children, no inheritance, no income. Gemma is 18 years old, an orphan, poor, with siblings depending on her. The doors to religious life seem further away than ever. But God is about to answer her question in a way no one expects. First, he will bring her to the edge of death. The year is 1895. Gemma is 18 years old, living with her aunt and uncle in Camiour. Trying to help with the younger siblings, she begins to feel pain. Sharp, excruciating pain in her kidneys. It forces her to walk bent over. She tries to ignore it, to push through, but then her legs give out. Paralysis. Complete paralysis. The doctors examine her. Osteitis of the lumbar vertebrae with subsequent cold abscess in the groins. In simpler terms, her spine is disintegrating. But that is not all. An unbearable pain in her head reveals otitis media acuta with mastoid involvement. Her ear infection has spread to the bone. The pain is so intense, she can barely remain conscious. She cannot eat. Only a little broth, some milk. Her hair falls out. Her body wastes away. She is confined to bed, almost certainly dying. The doctors give her days, perhaps weeks. The family prepares for the inevitable. The priest comes. Gemma receives the last sacraments. The viaticum, the Eucharist for the dying. She's fully conscious. She understands what is happening. She hears what the doctors have told her family. She's going to die. And yet, Gemma is not afraid. She accepts. If God wants to take her now, she is ready. She has given everything already. Her mother, her father, her hopes of religious life. What is left but her own life? But during these days of agony, something else begins. Gemma receives visits, not from family members, from someone else. A young man appears to her, not physically, but with such clarity that she can feel his presence, the warmth of his hands, his breath on her face. She knows who he is. Venerable Gabriel Passini, a Passionist seminarian who died young, devoted to the Blessed Mother. It was Sister Giulia Sestini who first told Gemma about Gabriel, who gave her a biography, who encouraged her to ask for his intercession. Cecilia Giannini, an elderly woman who will become crucial to Gemma's story, provided a relic. At first, Gemma refused to read the biography. The headaches were too severe, but eventually she did, and she loved it. She admired Gabriel's virtues, his purity, his devotion to Mary, his early death for the love of God. Now, he is with her, praying with her, consoling her, preparing her for what comes next. Sister Giulia, in consultation with Monsignor Volpi, Gemma's confessor, advises her to make a novena to Blessed Margaret Mary Alacoque, the mystic of the Sacred Heart, not yet canonized, but deeply venerated. Gemma agrees, but it is difficult. The pain is overwhelming. She forgets days, loses track, has to start over. She is so weak, so close to death, that completing the novena seems impossible. But she perseveres, and as she prays, near the end of the novena, she hears it again. That interior voice, the same one that asked for her mother. Do you want to be healed? Gemma pauses. She does not know what to answer. Is it better to be healed or to die and go to God? She genuinely does not know. The voice continues. You will be healed soon. And then it happens. Suddenly, inexplicably, Gemma rises from her bed. The paralysis is gone. The pain is gone. Her hair begins to grow back. The doctors who examined her days before are stunned. They have no explanation. It is February 1899. Gemma Galgani has been healed through the intercession of Blessed Margaret Mary Alacoque and Venerable Gabriel Passini. A medical impossibility. A miracle witnessed by multiple doctors and family members. The Church will later document this carefully. The evidence is undeniable. Gemma is healed. But the question returns, stronger than ever. What is God's plan for her life? She is now 20 years old, poor, still living on the charity of relatives, but healthy, strong enough to enter religious life. The desire burns in her heart more intensely than ever. She must become a nun. She must give herself entirely to God in the cloister. It is not a wish. It is a need, a vocation so strong it consumes her. So she begins to knock on doors. She writes letters. She applies to the Passionist convent in Corneto. The Passionists, the order of Gabriel Passini, the young saint who visited her on her deathbed. Surely this is where God is calling her. She waits for the response. Prays. Hopes. This must be God's will. After all he has done, healing her miraculously, calling her from childhood, surely he is preparing her for the cloister. The letter arrives, and the door closes. We cannot accept you. The words are polite, but final. The Passionist convent in Corneto has reviewed her application. They have considered her situation, and they have decided Gemma Galgani is not suitable for religious life. Why? The reasons vary depending on who tells the story. Some say it is her health. Despite the miraculous healing, they fear she is too fragile. Others say it is her lack of dowry. She has no money to bring to the convent. Still others hint at the reports from Sister Gesualda and Sister Elisa, the nuns who despised her, who may have sent negative recommendations. But the reason does not matter to Gemma. What matters is the result. The door is closed. The one thing she wanted most in the world, to give herself completely to God in religious life, has been denied. She is devastated. For weeks, she can barely function. The rejection cuts deeper than the paralysis ever did. At least with physical suffering, she could unite herself to Christ. But this, how does she unite rejection to the cross? But Gemma does not give up. If the convents will not accept her vows, she will make them anyway. Privately, before God alone. In 1899, during the spiritual exercises preached by the Passionist fathers of the Cathedral of San Martino in Lucca, Gemma approaches one of them, Father Gaetano Guidi. She asks permission to make private vows. He agrees. And on September 8th, 1899, Gemma makes the 3 vows: poverty, chastity, and obedience. Not in a convent, not before a community, but alone, in her heart before God. She will renew these vows regularly. They bind her as truly as if she were wearing a habit. She belongs to God now completely, even if no religious order will have her. Father Gaetano becomes an important figure in her life. Through him, she meets the Giannini family, Matteo Giannini, a pharmacist, his wife, their 12 children, and Matteo's elderly sister, Cecilia Giannini, the woman who provided the relic of Venerable Gabriel, the woman who heard about the girl of the miracle, Gemma's inexplicable healing, the woman who invited Gemma to her home to hear the story. They develop a bond immediately. Cecilia sees in Gemma something special, a purity, a devotion, a quietness that speaks of deep interior life. And then, during one of the Passionist missions to Lucca, Gemma meets the man who will change everything. Father Germano Ruopolo, a Passionist priest of austere vocation. Serious, rigorous, deeply spiritual. He hears Gemma's confession, speaks with her about her interior life, and immediately recognizes what he is dealing with. This is not an ordinary soul. This is a mystic, someone touched by God in extraordinary ways. He becomes her spiritual director, her confessor, her guide through the mystical landscape that is about to unfold. And later, he will order her to write everything down, every vision, every experience, every moment of her mystical life. That autobiography, titled by Gemma herself, The Book of My Sins, will become one of the most important mystical documents of the early 20th century. But it will also become a battleground. Some of its pages will bear scorch marks, burn marks. The devil does not want this book to exist. When Gemma's remaining family can no longer support her, it is the Gianninis who take her in. Cecilia and Matteo open their home. Gemma comes to live with them, not as a servant, not as a burden, as family. She has her own room. She helps with the household. She cares for the children. She prays. She continues her private devotions, her meditation on the Passion, her hunger for union with Christ. The Giannini children love her. Cecilia considers her almost a daughter. Even Matteo, initially skeptical, comes to respect the quiet holiness that radiates from this young woman. Gemma is 21 years old. She lives in a stranger's home on charity. She has no convent, no habit, no visible sign of religious life. She's been rejected by every door she knocked on, but she has her private vows. She has Father Germano as her spiritual director. She has a deep, consuming devotion to the Passion of Christ, and God is about to mark her in a way that will shock the world. It is June 1899, Thursday evening, and the wounds are coming. For 21 years, Gemma has walked through loss. She lost her mother at 7, her father at 18. She nearly lost her life to paralysis and disease. The convents closed their doors, one after another, telling her she was not suitable. She has nothing, no family of her own, no religious community, no habit to wear. She lives on the charity of a pharmacist's family, sleeping in a borrowed room. But she has her vows, made privately, witnessed only by God. She has her devotion to the Passion of Christ. She has her hunger for union with the crucified, and God is about to answer that hunger in the most literal way possible. What happens next will mark Gemma Galgani forever. Her body will bear wounds that medical science cannot explain. Her life will become a battlefield between heaven and hell. And the church will investigate for decades, trying to understand what happened in Lucca to this rejected orphan. The stigmata are coming, and with them, a mystical life so intense, so supernatural, that even those who lived with her struggled to believe what they witnessed. Stay with me. The most extraordinary part of this story is about to unfold. It is Thursday evening, June 8, 1899. The Giannini household is settling in for the night. The children are in bed. Matteo and his wife are occupied. Cecilia is in her room, and Gemma is kneeling in her small room, praying before a crucifix. This is not unusual. Gemma prays every evening, for hours sometimes. Her devotion to prayer is so intense that the family has learned not to interrupt her during these times. When Gemma is at prayer, she enters into a different realm. Her face changes. Her body becomes still. She's somewhere else entirely. Tonight, she meditates on the Passion. She contemplates the suffering of Christ, the scourging at the pillar, the crown of thorns pressed into his skull, the nails driven through his hands and feet, the lance piercing his side. This is her constant meditation. The Passion, the suffering, the love that endured such pain for the salvation of souls. She prays, "Lord, let me share in your suffering. Let me know what you felt. Let me love as you loved." And then it begins. A light appears before her. Not natural light. Something else. Something that fills the room with presence. And in the light, she sees him. Jesus. Not in a vision. Not symbolically. She sees him. The crucified Christ, with his wounds visible. He looks at her, and from his wounds, hands, feet, side, rays of light emerge. These rays strike Gemma's body. Her hands, her feet, her side. Pain. Intense, burning pain. But also love. Overwhelming love. The sensation is so powerful, she cannot describe it later. Pain and ecstasy mix together in a way that transcends both. The rays of light become wounds. Real wounds. Her hands begin to bleed. Her feet. Her left side below the ribs. The 5 wounds of Christ appearing on her body. The blood is real. It soaks through her clothing. It stains her bedding. The pain is so intense, she can barely remain conscious. But she does not cry out. She does not call for help. She remains in ecstasy, united to the suffering of Christ. Hours pass. When she finally returns to normal consciousness, she looks down at her hands. The wounds are there, deep, bleeding. The stigmata have appeared. From this night forward, for the next 4 years, the pattern will repeat. Every Thursday evening, Gemma will enter ecstasy. The wounds will open. She will bleed profusely from her hands, feet, and side until Saturday morning. Then, mysteriously, the wounds will close. By Saturday afternoon, only small white scars remain. The next Thursday, they will open again. The Giannini family witnesses this weekly. Cecilia tends to her, binding the wounds, changing the bloodstained cloths. The children see it. Matteo, initially skeptical, becomes convinced. This is not fraud. This is not hysteria. This is something beyond natural explanation. Father Germano documents everything. He examines the wounds. He interviews witnesses. He writes detailed accounts, including dates, times, descriptions. This is not hagiography. This is investigation. And the doctors come. Dr. Pietro Pfanner examines Gemma thoroughly. He is looking for evidence of self-infliction, for signs of mental illness, for any natural explanation. He finds none. The wounds appear spontaneously. They bleed heavily, more blood than should be possible from such wounds. They close completely within hours, and there is no scarring, no infection, no natural healing process. His conclusion, written reluctantly: I cannot explain these wounds through natural means. Even Monsignor Volpi, Gemma's confessor, struggles with this. He initially writes in his notes, extraordinary phenomena, possibly due to hysteria. But he watches, he investigates, he questions, and eventually, he changes his conclusion. He admits he was wrong. These are not hysterical symptoms. These are true stigmata. Word spreads through Lucca, the girl with the wounds, the orphan marked by Christ. People want to see, to witness, to verify. Some are devoted. They see in Gemma a living sign of Christ's love and suffering. They ask for her prayers. They believe. Others are skeptical. They mock. They accuse her of deception, of seeking attention, of theatrical religiosity. The newspapers publish articles, some sympathetic, others cruel, and in Rome, the church begins to pay attention. This is not the first case of stigmata. St. Francis of Assisi, St. Catherine of Siena, Padre Pio will come later, but it is always treated with extreme caution. Too many frauds, too many deluded souls. But the evidence from Lucca is compelling. Multiple witnesses, medical documentation, a young woman of known virtue and devotion. No signs of mental illness or deception. The investigation continues. And while the church investigates, Gemma continues to suffer. Every Thursday, every week, for 4 years. But the stigmata are not the only supernatural reality in Gemma's life. The wounds prove she is marked by Christ. But that very mark makes her target. The enemy is about to strike. The stigmata appear in June 1899. By July, the attacks begin. Gemma is in her room at night. The Giannini family is asleep, and something enters. Not human, not natural. A presence of pure malice, pure hatred. Gemma later describes it to Father Germano. The devil appears to her, sometimes as a terrifying figure, sometimes as a large black dog, sometimes as invisible force that strikes her, chokes her, burns her. The family hears it. Terrible sound from her room. Crashes. Gemma's voice crying out in prayer. When they rush in, they find her bruised, marked with burns, her room in disarray. But there is no intruder, no natural explanation. This is not psychological. This is not hysteria. This is demonic attack. And it is physical. The burns are real. The bruises are real. The marks on her skin are documented. In February 1901, Father Germano orders Gemma to write her autobiography. He wants a complete account of her mystical experiences, her interior life, her visions, her sufferings. Gemma obeys. Between February and May 1901, she writes. She titles it herself, The Book of My Sins. Despite everything, the stigmata, the visions, the miracles, she sees herself only as a sinner in need of God's mercy. But the devil does not want this book to exist. Multiple times during the writing, the manuscript is attacked. Pages are burned, not by fire in the room. The pages themselves spontaneously scorch, as if touched by an invisible flame. These burn marks are still visible today. The manuscript survives, preserved by the church. And on several pages, you can see it, brown scorch marks, as if someone pressed a burning coal to the paper. Father Germano documents this. Witnesses see it happen. The pages burn while Gemma is writing, while she is praying, while the manuscript sits on her desk. Why? Because this book will do immense good for souls. It will inspire thousands. It will document one of the most extraordinary mystical lives of the modern era. And the devil knows it, so he fights. And Gemma fights back, with prayer, with the rosary, with trust in Christ. How does Gemma combat these attacks? Not with exorcisms, though Father Germano does pray over her. Not with elaborate rituals. She fights with the weapons of ordinary Catholic life. The rosary, the crucifix, the Holy Mass, frequent communion. Obedience to her spiritual director. When the devil attacks, she clutches her crucifix and prays, Jesus, Mary, I love you. Save souls. When she is tempted to despair, the devil whispers that she is damned, that her sufferings are worthless, that God has abandoned her. She clings to the sacraments, to confession, to the Eucharist. The Eucharist is her great strength. Monsignor Volpe permits her to receive communion daily, extraordinary for that time. And when she receives, everything changes. The darkness flees. The attacks cease. Peace returns. She writes, when I receive Jesus in communion, I feel such strength that I know I can endure anything. The attacks continue throughout her life. They do not stop, but Gemma does not break. She endures. She grows stronger. She becomes more holy, not despite the battles, but through them. This is crucial to understanding her sanctity. Gemma is not a saint because supernatural things happen to her. The stigmata, the visions, the demonic attacks, these are not what make her holy. She is a saint because of how she responded to them. With humility, with trust, with obedience, with love. She never seeks attention. When people come to see the stigmata, she hides. When they call her a mystic, she insists she is only a sinner. When they praise her, she deflects to Christ. Father Germano writes, I have never met a soul more genuinely humble. Despite all these extraordinary graces, Gemma considers herself the least of all. This is the paradox of sanctity. The more God elevates her with supernatural gifts, the lower she considers herself. The more the world wants to elevate her, the more she hides. But the battles are taking their toll. The weekly stigmata, the demonic attacks, the intense spiritual life. Gemma's body is weakening. She is only 24 years old, but she looks older, worn, exhausted. And then, in 1902, she receives another message. Not from the devil this time, from Christ. He has one more mission for her. For 4 years, Gemma Galgani has carried the wounds of Christ in her body. Every Thursday, the stigmata open. Every Saturday, they close. 52 times a year, 200 times over 4 years. She has endured demonic attacks that leave burns on her skin. She has written her autobiography despite the devil's attempts to destroy it. She has lived a mystical life so intense that even the priests who guide her struggle to comprehend it. She is 24 years old. Her body is exhausted. Her health is failing. But her mission is not yet complete. In 1902, during one of her ecstasies, Jesus speaks to her. He gives her a final task, a mission that will outlive her, a dream that will only be fulfilled after her death. He wants a convent in Lucca, a Passionist convent, a place where women can dedicate themselves to the contemplation of his passion. The convents rejected Gemma. Now, Jesus is asking her to build one, and she will spend her last year, her final months of life, working toward this goal. But she will not see it completed. She will die before the foundation stone is laid. This is Holy Week, 1903. Gemma is 25 years old. Tuberculosis is consuming her body. The stigmata have stopped appearing. Her mission with them is complete. But new mission has been given, and soon, very soon, she will complete it in the only way possible, by dying. Stay with me. The final chapter is about to unfold. The year is 1902. During one of her ecstasies, Gemma hears Jesus speak to her clearly. He shows her a vision, a Passionist convent in Lucca, a community of religious women dedicated to contemplating his passion, a place of prayer, penance, and devotion. I want this convent founded, he tells her. Work toward this. Gemma is overwhelmed. She, a rejected postulant living on charity with no resources, is being asked to found a convent. How? But she obeys. She begins to speak about this vision with Father Germano, with the Giannini family, with anyone who will listen. She writes letters. She prays constantly for this intention. She offers all her sufferings, the stigmata, the attacks, everything for this single purpose. A Passionist convent in Lucca, a place where other women can live the life she was denied. But in September 1902, Gemma's health takes a decisive turn. Tuberculosis, the same disease that killed her mother. It has been growing in her lungs for months, perhaps years. Now it can no longer be hidden. She begins to cough blood. Her body weakens rapidly. She can barely eat. The Giannini family watches with growing alarm. The doctors confirm what everyone fears. She is dying. Out of caution, to protect the Giannini children from infection, Gemma is moved from their home to a nearby house on Via della Rosa. A small room, quiet, peaceful, a place to die. Cecilia Giannini stays with her, tends to her, wipes the blood from her lips, changes her bedding, sits with her through the long nights. Despite the risk of infection, Cecilia refuses to leave her. Father Germano visits regularly, brings her communion, prays with her, listens to her whisper about the convent. Even now, even dying, she speaks of it, begs him to work toward it, to make it happen. Promise me, she whispers, promise me the convent will be founded. He promises, though he does not know how it will be possible. It is Holy Week, 1903, the holiest week of the liturgical year, the commemoration of Christ's passion, death, and resurrection. On Good Friday evening, April 10th, Gemma enters a final ecstasy, a painful ecstasy unlike any before. She experiences the passion in her body one last time, not through the stigmata, those have ceased, but through interior suffering so intense that those present can barely watch. She remains in this state through the night. Cecilia holds her hand, prays with her, wipes her forehead. The next day is Holy Saturday, April 11th, 1903, the day between Christ's death and resurrection, the day of waiting, of silence, of the tomb. At 1:30 in the afternoon, Gemma opens her eyes. She looks at Cecilia, at Father Germano, who has just arrived. She smiles. Peace fills her face. And then, quietly, she dies. She is 25 years old. She has lived long enough to receive the stigmata, to battle demons, to write her autobiography, to envision the convent, but not long enough to see it built. Or so it seems. Within months of Gemma's death, things begin to happen. Father Germano publishes her story. Donations arrive. Interest grows. And on October 2nd, 1903, less than 6 months after her death, Pope St. Pius X signs the decree authorizing the foundation of the Passionist monastery in Lucca. The convent Gemma worked for. The convent she prayed for. The convent she died begging to see. It begins construction immediately. The first nuns arrive in 1905. The monastery is completed, and Gemma's body, preserved, incorrupt, is transferred there. She rests in the convent she founded through her prayers and suffering. The convent that rejected her in life claims her in death. The irony is not lost on anyone. The convents that would not accept her as a postulant now beg to have her as their patron. The religious life she was denied in person, she lives in spirit, and the miracles begin. Immediately, even before her canonization, people report healings through her intercession, conversions, spiritual graces. The little room where she died becomes a place of pilgrimage. In 1907, Father Germano publishes the first biography of Gemma Galgani. It spreads across Italy, then across Europe, then across the world. In 1917, the canonical process for her beatification begins. In 1933, just 30 years after her death, she is beatified. And on May 2nd, 1940, only 37 years after her death, Pope Pius XII canonizes Gemma Galgani, one of the fastest canonizations in church history. In his declaration, Pius XII calls her the star of my pontificate. He holds her up as a model for youth, for women, for all who suffer, and he authorizes her feast day, April 11th, the day of her death, Holy Saturday, the the day of waiting between death and resurrection. How fitting, because Gemma's life was exactly that: a waiting, a suffering, a death that led to resurrection, a cross that led to glory. Today, Saint Gemma Galgani's influence continues across the world. The Passionist monastery in Lucca stands as a living testament to her prayers. Her body, incorrupt, rests there still, a silent witness to the life she lived. The missionary congregation of the Sisters of Saint Gemma was founded in her honor, carrying on her devotion to the Passion of Christ. Thousands of young women have entered religious life inspired by her example. Her autobiography, The Book of My Sins, has been translated into dozens of languages. Millions have read it. Countless souls have found comfort in her words, especially those who suffer, who are rejected, who feel they have nothing to offer God. Because Gemma proves that God uses the weakest vessels, the rejected ones, the suffering ones, the ones the world throws away. What does Saint Gemma Galgani teach us? 3 timeless truths. First, God chooses the weak to confound the strong. Gemma had nothing: no family, no wealth, no influential connections. She was rejected by every convent, but God marked her with his own wounds. He chose her precisely because she had nothing else to offer but herself. Second, suffering united to Christ transforms. Gemma did not seek the stigmata. She did not ask for demonic attacks. She did not choose tuberculosis, but she united every moment of suffering to the cross. And through that union, she became holy, not despite suffering, but through it. Third, human rejection is not divine rejection. The convents said no, but heaven said yes. The world saw an orphan living on charity. God saw the star of pontificate. Never confuse closed doors with God's will. Sometimes he closes doors because he has something greater planned. Gemma, a gem, the name her uncle chose. The name her mother disliked because there was no saint with that name. But the parish priest blessed that name. May she become the first saint with that name. May she fill that empty place in paradise. And God heard that prayer. He took a gem and polished it. Every loss was a facet cut. Every rejection was a surface smoothed. Every wound was a depth revealed. And when he was finished, when the polishing was complete, he held up this gem to the light. And the world saw not a rejected orphan, not a sick girl living on charity, but a saint, a mystic, a bearer of the wounds of Christ, a star shining in the firmament of the church. The convents did not want her, but heaven did. The world called her unsuitable, but God called her his daughter of the Passion. And today, more than a century after her death, Gemma Galgani continues to shine. Not because of the stigmata, not because of the visions, not because of the supernatural phenomena, but because she loved Christ so completely that she became like him. Wounded, rejected, suffering, and through that perfect imitation, glorified. She died at 25, but her legacy is eternal. And the empty place in paradise that the priest spoke of, it is filled now, filled by a gem polished by suffering, a saint forged in fire, a soul that proved God's power is perfected in weakness. Saint Gemma Galgani, the Virgin of Lucca, the daughter of the Passion, pray for us. Thank you for staying with me through this long journey. May the example of Saint Gemma Galgani inspire your own walk with Christ, especially in moments of suffering, rejection, and seeming abandonment. Remember, the doors that close are often God's way of leading you to something greater. Subscribe to Catholic Hearts to discover more extraordinary stories of the saints who shaped our Catholic faith. These are not just stories. They are witnesses, proof that holiness is possible, that God still works miracles, that suffering has meaning when united to the cross. God bless you, and may Saint Gemma intercede